But look at the stuff that I've been talking about for 3 years that when I started talking about it, nobody was, and none of
Yeah.
this stuff had happened. Go back and watch my videos from very early 2020 where I'm talking about the BRICS, the Belt Road, or I'm talking about Saudi Arabia will join the BRICS, and ultimately you will see a situation where the world doesn't take dollars for oil. And I've been saying this for 3 years, and you know, I can't believe how much has happened. Well, the acceleration of these things is happening, and yet so few people know because the media doesn't tell us. So, God bless a guy like you who's out there standing out on a branch, the wind blowing at you, and telling the world the way you see it. I do it too, and hopefully someday we'll all be thanked for it. But I mean, I don't know. All I can tell you is that I try to put all the facts together, and Occam's razor says, well, what's the most logical outcome or reason for this? And that's why I say, is it just too stupid to be stupid? Could this have all been planned? Or are we being, as our country, just being run by a bunch of people who are inept and don't care about the future generations? Just the increase in the debt alone from January 1, 23 to 24 was over $2 trillion. It took us over 200 plus years, like 230 years to do the first 2 trillion. We did it in 1 year. We paid $900 billion in interest payments this year. And, and the Congressional Budget Office says by 2031, 100% of all discretionary spending will have to be borrowed because every dime of tax receipts will go to pay just the interest on the debt and mandatory entitlement spending like Social Security, which is 70 trillion underfunded. How big is a trillion seconds? 31,688 years ago. How the hell do you pay back 70 trillion to the
Yeah.
promises of this working public? You can't. So when you talk about 100% of all discretionary spending going to need to be borrowed, that means military too. So how are we going to be the most dominant military
Yeah.
presence on the planet and the most dominant financial wealthiest country in the world who has to borrow money just to pay interest on the debt and to fund our military? There's $10 trillion due in bonds this year, 2024, that we need to come up with. Where the hell are we going to get that? I got a good idea. Let's borrow more money to pay what we already borrowed.
Yep.
So we have entered a place where if you don't see that for what it is, engineering a soft landing, my ass. We have 5 trillion in assets backing between 150 and 200 trillion in debt, and the largest asset, student debt. We're broke, we're insolvent, we're losing our image on the world stage, and we're not telling the public what's important. So, I can keep saying the same thing over and over and over again, and I'm redundant, and I am fully aware of that. I keep trying to add more and more and more to the story that I've been talking about for 3 years. The reason I haven't pivoted from it is it keeps happening. It keeps coming true, greater and
Yep.
greater and greater and greater. So I keep following this progression of events. Where does it
And
end? You want to know the funny thing is? I'm having a hard time. I can see where it ends. I can see the dumping of dollars. I can see the whole system blowing up, and my mind goes black there. I
yeah,
don't know what happens
that
after. And I don't know. I mean, is it being engineered by people who want this to happen with good intentions, or is it bad
yeah.
intentions? I mean, what happens to the country? What happens? I don't know. I don't know, but I can tell you that we are heading down a path that will
We
be fraught with a lot of reckonings and probably a good deal of pain in terms of financial pain and the privilege it's been to be the world reserve currency is something we should be clinging to. And in fact, we've done everything we
yeah,
can to lose it. And if
right.
you indeed do see the Senate and the House say, yeah, we're going to not just sanction this money that we're holding, we're going to confiscate it and use it for the war in Ukraine. There will never be a country again that will trust us. So you have already opened Pandora's box by doing these things. Now you're going to blow it open.
You just said something and it makes a lot of sense. You said I can envision all this through until it just goes black. That's scary. Like to
Well,
just
when you talk about this being a cultural war where, red and blue, black and white, rich and poor, vaccine, no vaccine, this country is very divided and angry, and there's lawlessness. You can go into these in New York City, you can steal up to $1,000 and
yeah.
not go to jail, or, look at what's happening in all the big cities. And when you
Oh
talk
my
about
gosh.
when you talk about a cultural war like this, it becomes very dangerous in an economic catastrophe or a a market collapse, a currency collapse. You throw in the divisiveness, the anger, the dividedness, and that's one of my big premises. Is that I think if what this country stood for, like when I started in this industry, the people I spoke to largely were World War II veterans. And when they said something, you didn't even have to think twice. It was done. Their word was their bond. That was a generation that no one gave them anything. They worked their ass off. Most of them never went into debt. They didn't spend money they didn't have. They grew up during the Depression. They risked their lives. Many of them never came back, but they risked their lives for this country. One of my biggest clients that I ever had, I miss him dearly. His name was Bing, and Bing was on one of the ships right next to the USS Arizona in Honolulu when they were attacked in Pearl Harbor. And the conversations I had were incredible. And these people, you know, this was the kind of person where not him, but another guy, I'll never forget. I was probably 23, 24 years old. And I'm like, hi, John. He's like, what's this John stuff? It's Mr. Smith. You know, it was a situation where it was respect, it was hard work, it was belief in God, and you know I don't care if you're religious or not. It was the morals that go along with that. It was all of the things that made this country great. And you look at it now and wonder, you know, these guys are spinning in their graves. And so, yeah, I think that's really the scariest part of all of this, where it goes black. If you see a collapsed economy, or the world dump dollars and the byproduct of that is blown up markets, blown up banks, the whole 9 yards. Look, man, you're a father. What would you do if your child was starving to death and you had no choice but to be a criminal? I mean, I would. If my kids were starving to death and I had no choice but to find a way to feed them, I don't know a father that wouldn't.
Right.
And I say that to you when you talk, you know, that's just basic. But when you add in the fact that there's a lot of anger and divisiveness, and you know, the last time someone tried to pull a presidential nominee off the ballot was Abraham Lincoln, and not too shortly after that there was a civil war. So when you talk about the dividedness of this country, to me, what it really says is that are we really able? Forget about the fact that 65% is paycheck to paycheck, 45% over 100K paycheck to paycheck. Forget about the fact that we have, you know, record debt, student loan debt, which is our biggest asset, evidently, student mortgage, record mortgage debt, record credit card debt, and lowest level of savings ever. But then you put into it the 10 million people that are here illegally, the massive amount of homelessness, the lawlessness, the crime, the dividedness, the anger, and then add in an event. It's dangerous. It's very dangerous as far as I'm concerned. But if we were all united like they were back then, we're all pulling together as Americans, not as anything else, not black, white,
Right.
Jewish, non-Jewish, rich, poor, red, blue, vax. I mean, Americans, and we all come from somewhere. And I think that's lost in a large way. And our culture is being whitewashed. And that to me is the scariest part of all of this, because there will come a day of economic reckoning. There will. And when you can go around and rip down statues, you know, even in Arlington Cemetery, and literally erase our history, you know, it's just not a good thing. It's just forgetting about where we have come from. And I talk to a lot of very religious people. I'm not. I'm incredibly spiritual. I believe I'm very spiritual, put it to that way. But a lot of religious people tell me that our downfall as a country, and they believe this, right, wrong, or indifferent, has come because we've turned our back on God, and that this country was founded upon it. You said it when you did the Pledge of Allegiance and all of the things. This country was a religious one for a very long time. There are a lot of people who believe that these are end times. I hope they're wrong. I hear it every day. But I can simply tell you that we were a country that was united and could stand up and our back against the wall and defeat tyranny and make the greatest country of all time. And ask yourself, when you look at these cities and you look at our indebtedness and you look at the way we've divided ourselves and you look at the way the world looks at us, are we in a position to do that? I hope we are. Honest to God, I do. But dude, I'm telling you, I do these videos and I put myself out there. I subject myself to scrutiny. I go to a concert in to see Sting, and I'm walking through the casino at the Hard Rock in Fort Lauderdale, and some guy screams, Miles Franklin, Andy Scheckman, go silver. I mean, it's like I put myself out there, and
Wow.
my name. No one knows your name. I do. No one knows your name. Everyone knows my name. And I mean, I think about all of this stuff, and I still get up and I do it because I care. And I think that if I can wake up a few people just to take accountability, that's what you got to do right now. These are uncharted waters. These are scary times. You're not getting the truth from the media. You're not getting the truth from your advisors. You got to dig yourself. You have to. And if I wake up one person a day, that's amazing. And I hope
Yeah.
I do. But I will tell you that I am, as a father, I'm scared for the world my kids are growing up, and I truly am. And I think if you're not paying close enough attention.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good
That's
point.
why I do these things. And I do them with you. And I was so impressed by you because you're young and you're not the stereotype of the person doing what you're doing. And I was very taken back by that in a good way. And I think we need more people like you, the younger generation who is out there trying to help as many people as they can. We need to build a community, and it's hard to do. So, I don't know. I always try to let people know how impressed I am with you and what you're doing. But you and I are just a couple of voices out there, and I think there will come a time this year when people will look back and say, "My God, they were right. We should have done this.
Yeah.
We should have listened." And I think that moment of realization is rapidly approaching, and I don't know what triggers it. If it's a bail-in or if it's a admission by OPEC or whatever it is, some event we're being warned. Everyone keeps saying, including Ted Cruz. I was watching him the other day here this morning on Fox. I am really concerned of a domestic terror attack. Well, really, you let 10 million people. I'm not saying him. We let 10 million people in
Yeah.
here illegally, a lot of them on the FBI
Most
most
wanted.
dangerous list.
Yeah.
And what do you know? They're talking about homegrown terror. All of these things, man, are starting to rip apart at the fabric of this country, and we need to try to take it back. But you can't do that until you get your own house in order. Start one person at a time, starting with yourself. Get out of debt best you can. Start buying gold or silver or something, Bitcoin. I don't care what it is, on a
Yeah.
methodical basis. Every paycheck, if it's 1 ounce of silver, if it's a tenth of a Bitcoin, I don't care what it is. Do something and start to pay
Yeah.
yourself first, or you never get ahead. And then do all you can to help whoever you can, because these are important times. And I really don't think we've seen anything yet. I hope I'm wrong, but this will be a fun year to ride shotgun with you. And maybe fun isn't the right word, interesting for sure, which
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
Chinese curse, very appropriate, I think, in this discussion. But interesting indeed they will be.